states, including South Dakota, are working on plans to challenge this. Vaccine mandates in South Dakota are suing Governor Kristi Noem after the state denied their application to demonstrate on Capitol grounds. The group known as the Blue State Refugees wants to protest during next week's special session, but they cannot get a permit. Court documents say the Capitol grounds are not available because of the Christmas decorating season, which began on November 1st. So the group is taking the state to federal court. There is a hearing tomorrow morning in Pierre. When asked about the lawsuit this afternoon, Governor Kristi Noem says she believes the issue comes down to communication and the amount of events already taking place.
I think that you know, there was this all along, there was never any intention to deny anybody their free speech rights, that they will be accommodated.
For a closer look at the allegations and the people behind the lawsuit, we posted several documents filed in the suit on KELOland.com.
Turning now to weather, and Jay, I know a lot of people had sunshine today, but boy, it was just gloomy here in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, and only in Sioux Falls, Tom. The cloud line has been hanging over Sioux Falls all day long. Just a few miles west of Sioux Falls, it's been sunny all day long. And everywhere north of Sioux Falls has been sunny all day long. We had some bad luck as far as that morning fog and cloud cover, which just hasn't gone anywhere. Right now, 44 degrees. It's also cool under the cloud deck. South breeze at 9. This is the way Mitchell looks. This is the way most of KELOland looks. See that blue sky there, and it's warmer. This is the way it looks in Pierre. Just a few high clouds there. 59 degrees with a southeast breeze. And Rapid City's had another day in the 60s. Right now, 63 degrees with a blue sky. Here are the temperatures. You see that dark blue blot on the right-hand side of your screen? That's where we still have the fog and the low clouds. And that's where temperatures are in the 40s. Everybody else has been warmer than normal, and well, we expect things to improve. Overnight tonight, we'll call it partly cloudy. There could be a little more fog forming Sioux Falls and southeastern KELOland.
On both of these bills, Wolf.
All right, Caitlin, I want you to stay with us. I also want to bring in our congressional correspondent, Jessica Dean, and our Chief National Affairs correspondent, Jeff Zeleny, as well. Jessica, Democrats have promised votes before, only to back down. It's happened a few times already. So what are you hearing right now from lawmakers up on Capitol Hill?
Well, we just heard a few moments ago from the Democratic leadership. We saw Steny Hoyer go to the floor and say they are breaking for dinner. So there was kind of a flurry of activity. Everyone exited the House floor. They're going to take a break for dinner. And he said for members to stand by that there could be a vote later tonight, that they will give them 1 hour's notice. So right after that, we saw House Speaker Nancy Pelosi walk right by our camera here just a few moments ago. She went right back into her office where they continue to try to finalize this deal. As Caitlin noted, Wolf, there are still some outstanding issues over here, including immigration, drug price negotiations, and state and local tax deductions that they are still trying to work out. And they don't want to bring this to the floor until they have the votes, Wolf. And currently, there's no exact plan to bring it to the floor, just that they might. So that pretty much tells you everything you need to know in terms of where we are at this moment. And that is, we just aren't sure if there will be a vote on this tonight.
And they want to vote on the $1.75 trillion social spending bill before the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that already passed the Senate. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. So they want to do Build Back Better first and then do the bipartisan infrastructure bill tomorrow. Now, Nancy Pelosi had said earlier today she hoped to do Build Back Better today, do the infrastructure bill tomorrow. Whether or not that remains to be seen, we just don't know. And as you all have followed and we have reported, there was a lot of back and forth about which comes first and are they tied together. They've settled on Build Back Better first and then the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The question remains when those votes will happen.
You know, Jeff, Democrats are still arguing with what's in and what's out of this bigger spending plan. Moderates and progressives are each taking different lessons from the Democrats' loss in Virginia, aren't they?
They absolutely are, Wolf. I mean, there is a greater sense of urgency since the loss in Virginia via Democratic former Virginia governor, of course, Terry McAuliffe, believes he lost, and one of the reasons because the Democrats in Congress simply have been divided. There simply has not been any action. So yes, there's a bit more urgency, but as Jessica was just pointing out there, I mean, this is hardly a new concept. You know, this has been underway here for weeks, and negotiations have been going on for months. So, you know, it is it's really typifying this whole issue here, that the president and Democratic leaders have just simply been unable to corral their leadership. We do expect a vote. It certainly looks like it's getting closer than it has before. But, boy, this is not exactly how to run a railroad. And this is one of the very reasons that voters simply, you know, think that Democrats don't necessarily have their act together. So we'll see if they get this done. We'll see how the legislation actually looks. But, you know, at this point, there is a sense of urgency. But really, why should there be urgency now? I mean, they've gone to this point. So get it right, get it done. We'll actually see what happens. It's one of those open-ended questions here, when or if it will get done tonight or in the coming days.
Yeah, let's not forget how tight the Democratic majority
they need everyone
in the House is. They certainly do. 221 Democrats in the House, 213 Republicans, one vacant seat. They can't afford to lose 3 or 4 Democrats because the Republicans presumably aren't going to vote for this, for the broader social spending bill. They will vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is going to which is clearly going to pass the House and then go to the president for his signature. Caitlin, as you reported, moderate Democrat Abigail Spanberger says nobody elected President Biden to be FDR, but hasn't Biden's whole goal been to pass this truly transformational legislation and do it through reconciliation, a simple majority, 50 votes plus the vice president?
Well, I'm not sure if during the campaign the president was counting on using reconciliation to do it. That became clear, obviously, once he took office, how Republicans were completely opposed to this agenda that the president is trying to get through. But that is kind of the White House pushback to those comments and that criticism from not only Abigail Spanberger, but from other Democrats who are saying that this is causing a drag on what's happening, especially in these races that you saw Tuesday night. And the White House is saying this is something that the president has said he was running on since he was a candidate. He has made clear that this is the agenda he was going to pursue. He wanted to get these things done. Of course, several of his key campaign promises are not actually ending up in this bill as it stands right now, but that is the pushback from the White House. Though, of course, we should note the climate here is what's under consideration by these Democrats, especially ones like Abigail Spanberger, who are going to be up for re-election next year, who are concerned about things that are affecting Americans now that were not necessarily a major issue in their lives a year ago, including, of course, inflation, the supply chain issues, these shortages that you're seeing all across the nation that the White House is also talking about. But Democrats are saying maybe we should be focusing more on this since it's a chief concern for these voters and less on the other.
You know, Jeff, you heard the House Speaker say she was very unhappy, her words, very unhappy, that they didn't pass the infrastructure bill last week. Do Democrats realize it's way past time to just get this done? They could have passed it in August when it passed the Senate with 69 votes, 19 Republicans, all 50 Democrats voted for it. They could have passed it in August when it first came to the House, but they've been waiting and waiting and waiting.
Without a doubt, and this really has underscored this divide deeply within the Democratic Party. Progressives believed their only hope to getting the larger package was to hold off on the infrastructure. So what that showed was there's no trust. There's no trust between the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the moderate wing and the White House. So in doing so, it not only probably affected the Virginia governor's race, but it certainly has affected President Biden's overall approval rating, which now is at the lowest of any president since former President his predecessor, Donald Trump. So this certainly is something that, look, there's plenty of blame to go around on both sides, but certainly there could have been a vote in August, but progressives simply didn't trust the rest of their party to come along and do this. But now, as Caitlin said, some of the very principles that the president campaigned on, like free community college, other matters, are simply not in this bill. So I was speaking with one senior Democrat this morning who said, look, the president has decided to get engaged in this legislative process. So why not simply tell these members to vote? I need to vote on it right now. He's walked up to that line and asked them for their support. He's been on the Hill a couple times, but never said we need to vote at this moment. So that is what some of them are waiting for. The White House, of course, wary to jump into all this, but it simply does not have a good look, and we're seeing the effects of this in the country.
Yeah, it's having an enormous impact indeed. All right, guys, thank you very much. Just ahead, Democrats clearly clashing over President Biden's sweeping spending bills. as the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, urgently pushes for a vote. We're going to get the very latest on the state of play from the top House progressive, Congresswoman from Jayapal. She's standing by live. We will discuss when we come back.
I've spent my career.
This animated Great Dane.
A little closer to home.
Well, we are getting closer to the weekend and a forecast that looks fantastic for early November. Phil takes a look when we come back here in KSFY.
Look what I found at Benson's Flea Market.
To it this week, but I just want to remind you, the largest investment to combat the climate crisis in history. Cuts pollution and reduces energy cost and creates good-paying jobs. It's a health issue, clean air, clean water for our children. It's a jobs issue, being competitive and preeminent in the world in terms of new green technologies. And technology is really what is helping us to advance in making these jobs better and us more competitive. And third, it's a national security issue. As national security experts tell us, the competition for resources and habitat resulting from drought and famine and drying up of rivers and rising sea levels and encroachment of deserts and the rest, the migration that can creates conflict and therefore a national security issue, but as always, a values issue for us to pass on this planet to future generations in the best possible way. And young people have taken the lead on this, so it's very exciting. So on the Build Back Better, one of the other issues we were dealing with since last week is the immigration issue, where I think we're finding our common ground, and what is in the bill has good resonance. Others want more, so do I. Want it all, but you don't get it all. And we would be open to it. What we're having in the legislation, which I'm sure you're very well versed in, is the work permit and protection. And we would like to have registry in there because we think it is the easiest, most efficient, fair way to deal with people who are here so that they can work and their families can feel safe and that they will not be exploited. But it doesn't seem to have a big prospect in the Senate. So we don't want to ask members to vote for something that wouldn't have a good prospect on the Senate that is controversial. If the Senate, though, and I urge them to put it forth, it would involve overruling the parliamentarian perhaps, not getting bogged down in their rules. It's up to them. But if they want to do that, we want to do that. But it has to start with them because it is, the parliamentarian has already put forth the message that this would not, this would be either burnable or privilege, and we can't have that. So what else? I guess it's time to take your questions. Okay.
What effect do you think having not passed these bills had on Tuesday's election results?
Well, let me say it in a different way. I think that getting the job done, producing results for the American people is always very positive. Each election is different. As you know, I was former party chair, and I always know, let's look down into the numbers and see what it is. But I do think as the American people learn more about what we are doing in this legislation for families, for children, for women in the workforce, to save our planet and the rest, it will be very positive. You can't deny that it would be very positive.
Do you think Democrats were penalized for having not gotten these things done?
Again, I haven't seen that and all of the analysis, and I know from my own experience that as I've said to you before, the plural of anecdote is not data. Let's see what the data is as it comes out. But there's no question.
As someone who resembles...
Over the past decade, we've gotten used to this idea that globally interest rates are going to be lower, and maybe that will continue. But if it doesn't, if the Fed had to raise interest rates, there are questions about how that would influence the economy because the U.S. government would have to spend more than it has in the past to service the debt. At the same time, I think it's important not necessarily to compare the debt of a large superpower to the debt of a family. You know, the idea a household needs to make sure that they can pay off their debt every month. They can keep their credit card balances manageable. You do have to pay it back eventually. With sovereign debt, it's not quite the same. You want to make sure, of course, that you're able to service the interest payments on your debt. You don't want to be adding to that. You don't want the debt to be growing just because you're borrowing to pay the interest costs. But you don't actually have to pay down the debt. The U.S. is in a very enviable situation globally because we are the reserve currency. The U.S. is the dollar is seen as the reserve currency, and so a lot of people want to own dollar-denominated assets. They want to buy U.S. Treasury securities, and so that has kept our borrowing costs much lower than they would otherwise be.
Prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
For Harrisburg and T.
From fresh produce to clothes, shoes, personal care, and grocery items. We'll show you what you can find inside these new stores coming up in tonight's Your Money Matters at 10.
Fewer Americans signed up for unemployment benefits last week. According to the Labor Department, first-time filings for jobless claims fell by 14,000 to 269,000. Now, that was better than expected and marks a new pandemic-era low. Striking John Deere workers have rejected their employer's latest contract offer, which included an immediate 10% raise. After the result of the union vote was announced, a John Deere executive indicated that it would be the company's final offer. The strike involves some 10,000 workers who walked off the job in mid-October.
With Christmas season less than 2 weeks away, many people are gearing up for the holidays, and that includes we here at KELO Media Group. Today, crews work to replace bulbs on the tower outside the KELO TV studio in downtown Sioux Falls. The annual lighting of the holodeck tower will take place the Friday after Thanksgiving, right before the Parade of Lights.
I don't think those workers could see much.
It was a little foggy out there today. And look, it's kind of starting to clear up now.
Hey, some blue sky. All right.
Looks good. Jay's going to let us know what our Friday will have in store for us next.
Here's a look at your local stocks. Jamie.
At the end of the day, if we can't get that was the Speaker's decision. I applaud it to put paid family leave back in, and of course we're very supportive of that. So I don't think that's the issue for the handful of people that are left. I think they really are just getting comfortable with what's in it, and I think they're getting that information, and hopefully we'll be able to pass it through very quickly. What I found was interesting that Democratic Congresswoman Kathleen Rice, a woman you know, rejects your takeaway from the Virginia election results. She said this, she said, I don't understand some of my more progressive colleagues saying that what we need to do is to get both of these bills done and shove even more progressive stuff in. What we're talking about is not resonating with voters. How do you respond to her? Well, look, I don't like to call anybody out, but what I will just say is that if you look at each of the pieces of this bill, they are incredibly popular. Each piece is incredibly popular with voters. And don't forget, these aren't crazy progressive ideas that are out of the frame of what the president actually came to Capitol Hill, and we all stood up and applauded him for. This is the president's agenda. It's what we ran on, and it will reduce costs for poor families and working families, middle-class families across the country. It will take on climate change. It will give people the kind of security, economic security, that I think they are desperately needing because we're still in the throes of the worst recession, worst pandemic that we've had, something that we've been in for 2 years and 2.5 years now. And so it's really important that we answer the hurt that people have, and these provisions are universally popular. And again, this is what the president and all Democrats, progressive, conservative, whatever you want to call people, all of us ran on these proposals. There's obviously still disagreement. We're going to get, we'll find out the next day or so what happens. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, you got your hands full up there on Capitol Hill. Thanks for taking a few moments and joining us. Thank you all.
Coming up, we're learning a key witness in the January 6th investigation is now expected to face the Select Committee in a matter of hours. We've got new information. We'll update you when we come back.
So the full CDC signed off on Pfizer vaccine for ages 5 and above last night, and so vaccine has arrived and we are distributing it to all of our different locations. So probably by Thursday morning, most of our locations should have vaccine and begin the vaccination process. And similarly with pharmacies and other providers in town should have access to it here in the next day. And it's shown to be quite safe. One of the nice things that came out of the studies in 5 to 11 years of age is that they tolerate the vaccine even better than older kids and adults do, with a lot fewer side effects, the reactive symptoms, and absolutely no serious side effects.
We did a poll for our viewers. According to that poll, a little over a fourth of the people that answered that poll plan to get their kids vaccinated. Do you see this as having a limited impact of the approval, or do you think that this is still some progress, just having some people with their kids vaccinated is better than nothing?
Yeah, so the bottom line right now overall with COVID in our area is that for the past several weeks, we have just been very stable with the number of cases every day, the number of hospitalizations every day, and unfortunately the number of deaths that we're seeing from this. I mean, the good news is we're not going up anymore, but the bad news is that we just are not going down. And so the hope is we can just get enough more people vaccinated, either for the first time, get their boosters, or now, especially with these younger age groups, getting the children vaccinated. Not only are we protecting them, but we can reduce the spread within our community and finally start to get these numbers coming back down again, because they're just not coming down, at least in our area.
For more information about vaccinating your kid, head over to avera.org/medical minute.
Phil has one more check of the forecast when we come back here on KSFY. A reminder to get your weekend started with Dakota News Now. Join Cordell Ryan and Austin Haskins Saturday and Sunday mornings at 9. We've got news when you want it.
Dakota News Now, sponsored by Montgomery's.
Profile.
Don't let the big one get away. Sign up today.
Anyway, we're partially responsible for what happened on Tuesday.
Wasn't that a question you asked?
Similar.
What I said was any sign of progress is always good for the public when they understand what it is, and I think they understand infrastructure pretty well. So it would have been better if we had. I don't know, because I haven't seen the data. Perhaps you have. I think there were other issues at work in that election, and it remains not for me to make an observation unsubstantiated by data and science and fact. I'm very scientific about elections, district by district, within the district, region by region, and we'll see what that is. But it was not a good night. So let's just not go away from that. But you have to ask them. If that's what they said, that's your story. I'm not going to comment on their story.
Thank you. So we have this.
Any more women here?
So we have this number from the Joint Committee on Tax.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have these blue dog, moderate Democrats who are holding out wanting a CBO school. There are differences between those, and they had indicated to me that those two things are not quite the same. Is that enough to bring them across the line, or what has to happen?
Those two things are not quite the same.
A CBO score and a JCT score, and therefore, is that going to be enough to get them to vote later tonight, tomorrow on that, or is this
Let me say that we have been all along, this is not sequential, like when we get to this point, we'll send this here. All along, we've been sending things to CBO. This is not new to them. And same thing with joint tax, and they've come now with our bill come out and said how much money it will absolutely produce. And that doesn't include over and above the prescription drug money, which is hundreds of billions of dollars, as well as $400 billion from the enforcement. And by the way, considered to be a low figure. Former IRS directors have written and said it could be close to $1 trillion, but we're counting it low. We have been very conservative in every estimate that we make, so that it truly is formidably paid for. The CBO also has been. The thing about the CBO is they have most of the information now. They have the new information, but they have to correlate it. You know, they have to say, if you say, well, we had 3.5, now we have 1.7, cut it in half, or whatever the number is, cut it in half. It doesn't work. They have to relate it, what the impact is from one area to the next. Takes a little longer, more
Cetaphil, complete care for your sensitive.
You can be a part of the national conversation by participating in C-SPAN's Student Cam video competition. Your opinion matters. So if you're a middle or high school student, we're asking you to create a 5 to 6 minute documentary that answers the question, how does the federal government impact your life? Your documentary must show supporting and opposing points of view on a federal policy or program that affects you or your community using C-SPAN video clips, which are easy to find and access at cspan.org. C-SPAN Student Cam Competition awards $100,000 in total cash prizes, and you have a shot at winning the grand prize of $5,000. Entries must be received before January 20th, 2022. For competition rules, tips, or just how to get started, visit our website at studentcam.org. C-SPAN is your unfiltered view of government. We're funded by these television companies and more, including Comcast.
Oh, you think this is just a community center?
Not your day. Available at Walmart, Walgreens.
To put some questions before a jury, but if everything is going to turn on a tent, then Ellie is exactly right. You need someone who's going to turn tail the way that Michael Cohen did. So more Michael Cohens, fewer Weebays.
Well, and if we take the Weebay inspiration for Trump's legal critics here, Ellie, it's like you want it to be one way, but it's the other way.
But it's the other way. But it just keeps being the other way, and it's not just in New York State with Trump, right? It's in D.C. It's inside the Beltway with Merrick Garland, you know, kind of slow walking a bunch of stuff. It's been 2 weeks since Steve Bannon ignored Congress, and we still haven't seen any charges for him, right? So like, the wheels of justice turn slowly, and there are good reasons for it to turn slowly. Prosecutors don't make charges that they don't think will stick, and there is a good reason for them to do that. Like, pretty much the only thing worse than not charging Trump would be charging him and then having him walk away scot-free as if he was being tried in the Senate again. So, like, there are good reasons for this to be taking a long time. I just keep waiting for the bit of news that suggests that the pieces on the board have moved in some way. And honestly, I'm still kind of shocked. I mean, maybe this is just me. I am still kind of shocked that Alan Weisberg is keeping his mouth shut. I really thought that would be the guy who told the truth, because
In Women, the new details. The American dream. After enduring tragedy in Afghanistan, how 4 siblings are now rebuilding their lives in the United States. Eye on America. Climate change is eroding Native American land in the Pacific Northwest, forcing one tribe to move its entire village to higher ground. Deadly film shooting. What Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is doing to prevent a tragedy like the one on Alec Baldwin's movie set. And proving age is just a number. A 70-year-old mother bonds with her son by boldly climbing to dangerous heights.
This is the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell, reporting from the nation's capital.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. We want to begin with that new federal rule for all Americans who work for companies with 100 or more employees. It says get vaccinated against COVID by January 4th. That's 2 months from today, or face weekly COVID testing. It was an idea from President Biden, first raised in September, and today OSHA at the Labor Department made it official. Well, tonight there are Republican governors in a number of states saying they will file lawsuits against the requirement, arguing it is federal overreach. And the National Retail Federation is calling the requirement burdensome on retailers during the crucial holiday season. One thing is clear tonight, the pandemic is far from over. Cases are rising or holding steady in at least 34 states. An average of more than 40,000 Americans are being treated for COVID in hospitals each day. CBS's Carter Evans is going to lead off our coverage in Los Angeles as a new vaccination mandate is in effect tonight. Good evening, Carter.
Right, that one mandate went into effect here today, but tonight we're just learning that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says that White House plan to require workers to get vaccinated or test once a week, well, he says that's unconstitutional, and he's suing. Tonight, tough new vaccine measures that are expected to impact 84 million workers. The Labor Department is now requiring employers with 100 or more employees to get their workers fully vaccinated or test them for COVID at least once a week. Unvaccinated workers must also wear a face mask in the workplace. Employers who fail to comply by January 4th could be fined nearly $14,000 per violation.
Thank you for joining us today.
But at a committee hearing in Washington today, some senators blasted the idea of more rules to fight COVID.
Back away from mandates. Educate, encourage, inform. Don't be divisive.
In San Francisco, officials are moving forward with plans to extend the city's indoor proof of vaccination requirements to children 5 to 11 years old. That age group became eligible for Pfizer's kid-size vaccine this week. San Francisco already has a mandate in place requiring everyone 12 and up to prove their vaccination status before entering places like restaurants, gyms, and sporting events.
Guys, how are you? Just need proof of vaccination, please.
A similar mandate began today in Los Angeles County. Customers at indoor bars, lounges, and nightclubs now have to show proof of vaccination or remain outside. Alex Manos is co-founder of Rocco's Tavern in West Hollywood.
It's difficult to tell somebody because of your medical choice, you cannot come in here and eat pizza or eat some wings or have a beer or watch a game.
So you have to become enforcers?
At this point, yes.
Whether you like it or not?
Yes. As a business owner, turning customers away is not what we want to do, ever.
Well, starting next week, almost all Los Angeles businesses will be required to check for vaccination status, and there will likely be pushback. This is a fast food chain here on the West Coast, In-N-Out. In some of their locations in Northern California, well, they refuse to check vaccine cards, opting instead to close their dining room for everyone. Nora?
Carter Evans, thank you. Well, tonight there are accusations of discrimination as the racially charged Ahmaud Arbery murder trial gets underway with 11 white jurors and just one black juror. CBS's Omar Villafranca is at the courthouse in Brunswick, Georgia.
No justice!
The nearly all-white jury will hear opening statements in the trial of the 3 men accused of murdering 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery. Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, says prosecutors told her their case is strong.
They have lots and lots of evidence. They're really not satisfied with the jury that has been selected, but they're sure that the evidence will prevail.
Defense attorneys struck 11 of the 12 black jurors from the final pool, which even raised eyebrows with the presiding judge, Timothy Walmsley.
This court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination in the panel.
But the judge said he'll allow the current jury to proceed because, by state law, there were other valid reasons for why the jurors were dismissed. Lee Merritt is an attorney for the Arbery family.
There was a thumb put on the scales of justice by the defense to get a jury they thought would be more favorable for their clients. That's normal, but to use racial discrimination to do so, it shouldn't be allowed.
Investigators say Arbery was out jogging in February of last year when he was chased down, shot, and killed. The men said they thought Arbery was a burglary suspect and shot him in self-defense. Police arrested the shooter, Travis McMichael, his father, Gregory McMichael, and their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, the man who recorded the video.
I'm hoping that even though we have 11 whites and 1 black, that they will be able to review all evidence and come out with a guilty verdict.
This trial is expected to last several weeks. The McMichaels and Roddy Bryan are also facing federal hate crime charges in a case that'll head to court early next year. Nora?
Omar Villafranca, thank you. Well, tonight there's promising news about a vaccine aimed at preventing cervical cancer, which kills more than 4,000 women in the U.S. every year. Researchers in Britain say the rate of cervical cancer in women who were vaccinated between the ages of 12 and 13 was 87% lower than it was among women who were not vaccinated. Let's bring in CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook. And John, HPV, it is
employees eventually taken out of hiding.
We are all safe at this time.
All gathering in the hotel lobby. Police say that the shootout was between rival groups of drug dealers. 2 of them actually died on that beach. The hotel says that no guests or staff were injured. David?
All right, Victor, thank you. Tonight, the U.S. Navy has fired the top 3 leaders aboard the attack submarine, the USS Connecticut, after that nuclear-powered sub collided with an underwater seamountain. Our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, back with us tonight on this. And Martha, they clearly believe that this never should have happened.
That's exactly right, David. It was the nuclear-powered fast attack submarine, the USS Connecticut, that slammed into that uncharted seamountain in the South China Sea, injuring 2 sailors. But now the 3 top leaders on that submarine have been relieved of duty, fired from command. The Navy believed that even though the seamountain was not on any charts, the accident was preventable. A U.S. official telling ABC News that the submarine was going too fast in an area that was not well charted. The 3 leaders will be reassigned within the Navy, but David, their careers are essentially over. David?
All right, Martha Raddatz with us tonight from Washington. Martha, thank you. And from Capitol Hill tonight, pressure building on House Democrats to pass President Biden's 2 bills. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was pressed today. Did failure to get at least the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed play into that Republican victory in Virginia on election night? And this evening, we're now learning paid family leave has now been added back into that second bill. But will it survive? And when could there be a vote on either one? Rachel Scott on the Hill again tonight.
Tonight, a new sense of urgency from House leaders on Capitol Hill, scrambling to hold a vote on President Biden's domestic agenda after Tuesday's devastating election results.
It was not a good night.
House Democrats under fire for failing to pass the popular bipartisan infrastructure bill. The president warning voters are looking for Democrats to deliver.
Do you believe the House Democrats in any way were partially responsible for what happened on Tuesday?
Any sign of progress is always good for the public when they understand what it is, and I think they understand infrastructure pretty well. So it would have been better if we had. I don't know because I haven't seen the data. I think there were other issues at work in that election.
Progressives have refused to pass the infrastructure bill without a vote on the president's sweeping economic package. But today, a growing number of House moderates pushing back, calling for a vote on the infrastructure bill first. They still have questions about the other bill. One key moderate senator insisting progressives have to face reality.
We don't have the numbers that FDR had or that Lyndon Baines Johnson had in order to get some major legislation done. We don't have those. This is not a center-left or a left country. We are a center, if anything, as a little center-right country, and that's being shown. And we ought to be able to recognize that.
Rachel Scott back with us live on the Hill tonight. Rachel, there's also that news this evening on the proposal for paid family leave now back in the House bill. We know paid family leave is an issue that has support from Democrats and in the past from some Republicans too. But there's been this debate among Democrats on whether this should be included right now.
That's right, David. And Senator Joe Manchin, that key moderate holdout, he supports the issue, but he does not believe it should be included in this package. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi made it clear to me tonight that she believes it should be in. Democratic leadership was hoping for a vote on the president's economic agenda by the end of today. But right now, it's unclear if they're going to meet that deadline, David.
Rachel Scott again tonight. Thank you, Rachel. In Kenosha, Wisconsin tonight, a juror in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse on trial for shooting 3 in a police protest, 2 of them killed. Well, that juror dismissed after he told a court deputy a joke about the police shooting of Jacob Blake, which of course launched those protests. Kyle Rittenhouse on trial for killing 2 and wounding the 3rd person during those protests that followed Blake's shooting. Before testimony today, the judge asking the juror if he would be comfortable repeating that joke. When he declined, he was dismissed. In Georgia tonight, to another high-profile, racially charged case, 3 white men on trial for murder in the shooting death of unarmed black jogger Ahmaud Arbery. Tonight, just 1 black juror now on that jury. And what the judge said about this today. Here's ABC's Steve Osunsami.
There are people watching this tonight who say this is another example of what happens in South Georgia. Of the 12 jurors seated in this racially sensitive case, only 1 of them is African American. And this is a county where nearly 1/3 of the residents are black. The judge in this case blamed racism.
This court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination in the panel. But that doesn't mean that the court has the authority to reseat.
There aren't many people who live down here, about 85,000 in the whole county, and they had a hard time finding potential jurors to choose from. So many were turned away because they personally knew either the defendants or the victim. And tonight, defense lawyers are accused of using their strikes to show all but 1 of the potential black jurors who were left the door. Ahmaud Arbery was killed last February after he was stopped by Gregory McMichael, his son Travis McMichael, and their neighbor William Roddy Bryan Jr. The 3 all face murder and other charges. They have pleaded not guilty. They told police they thought Arbery was the person seen on surveillance videos visiting a home construction site in the neighborhood. But police report that he never stole anything.
No justice!
No peace! Demonstrators rallied at the courthouse today, and the victim's family says they're not surprised the jury is mostly white.
I wasn't surprised. That's just some of what we've already been facing in this case, just another part of the injustices that we see here in Glenn County.
The special prosecutor fought the removal of 8 black potential jurors in this case, but she lost. This trial begins in earnest tomorrow morning. David?
All right, Steve Osunsami from Georgia tonight. Steve, thank you. We're going to turn next here tonight to the alarming evidence now emerging in the case of 2 men accused of what could have been a deadly plot, a hate-filled plan that was set to unfold in Virginia. Authorities say the men belong to an extremist group that espouses racial hatred and anti-Semitism. And tonight, you're about to hear the FBI recordings right here. The 2 men are heard planning a deadly attack in the U.S. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
The FBI says these men, fueled by racist hate, plotted mass murder.
The time for violent revolution is now.
Patrick Jordan Matthews and Brian Mark Lemley Jr. are admitted members of the white supremacist group, The Base. Here is Matthews wearing a gas mask, calling for a race war.
If you want the white race to survive, you're going to have to do your part.
ABC News has obtained this newly released video as well as audio evidence from the case. The men had been under investigation for possible domestic extremism, but in December 2019, the FBI obtained a court order allowing them to secretly place a surveillance camera and microphone in the men's Delaware home.
We need to go back to the days of decimating blacks and getting rid of them wherever they stand.
The 2 were arrested in January 2020, just before the FBI claims they intended to launch their civil war by attacking a gun rally in Richmond, Virginia.
While the Virginia situation is happening, make other things happen. Derail some rail lines. Great, let's shut down the rest of the roads. You know, you can kick off the economic collapse of the U.S. within a week.
The FBI believes the men, who both had military training, had the means to carry out the plot, discovering 1,500 rounds of ammunition, firearms, and tactical gear. Both pleaded guilty to gun charges in June and were each sentenced to 9 years in prison last week. David, the threat of white supremacy is rising. FBI Director Christopher Wray testified this year that the number of domestic terrorism cases involving white supremacists has tripled since he became director in 2017. David?
All right, Pierre Thomas reporting tonight. Thank you, Pierre. And when we come back on this busy night, the new and horrific video now emerging tonight in the case of that NFL star and that DUI crash, allegedly at 156 miles per hour. The video of the other car erupting into flames. The driver did not survive. And then here tonight, the freeze warnings across several states, alerts actually from Texas all the way up into the Northeast tonight.
Trading isn't just a hobby.
Your airway's narrow and there's less breathing room.
Primatene Mist is clinically
in hundreds of thousands of productions without anyone getting injured, except when people don't follow the safety rules. The rules are actually adequate, but you have to hire people who are willing to enforce them, and you have to have a culture of safety on the set where everyone says safety first, not rush, 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 cut a few bucks, hire this inexperienced person. That's really the issue. Now, absolutely, when you can use a prop gun in place of a real gun and no one's going to tell the difference, why not use the prop gun?
Sure.
But the issue is that live ammo was brought onto set and that a gun was pointed at someone.
The other question, Steve, that people have asked me is why use a real gun at all? If, in fact, you can use post, you can do things, in the editing with the camera angles, with the lighting, in a lot of different ways that don't require the use of a real gun. To The Rock's point, why have a real gun on the set at all?
Yeah, if you can do the same thing and you can do it without having a live gun, all the better. But the fault is in the handling, not in the equipment.
All right, let's talk about the latest allegation from the lawyers for the armorer, suggesting that this might have been sabotage. Here's what they said on the Today Show.
She loaded rounds from that box into the handgun, only later to find out and she had no idea. She inspected the rounds, that there was a live round. Now, we don't know, however, whether that live round came from that box. We're assuming it did. We're assuming somebody put the live round in that box, which if you think about that, the person who put the live round in the box of dummy rounds had to have the purpose of sabotaging this set.
Well, Steve, we heard you chuckling on the way into that sound clip, so I'm guessing, and I know you well enough now after as many times as we've talked, what you think about this.
Yeah, it sounds like total malarkey. That's like saying that the person who put the gas in my gas tank is responsible for me crashing my car later. I mean, I'm responsible when I operate the vehicle. The person who handles the firearm, the person who loads the firearm, they're responsible for inspecting it. And I don't believe that there's an armorer in the world who can't tell the difference between a live round, which has an unfired primer and is full of gunpowder, and a dummy round that has a fired primer. And if I'll put that near my mic,
Yep.
You hear that?
We do.
Those are BBs that we put in there so that we know. So when you're going to load a gun on set, you check every round to make sure you feel those BBs rattling, so you know there's not gunpowder in there.
So that apparently didn't happen,
And let's say they were just plinking earlier in the day.
Right.
No, of course that didn't happen. And I can't believe that, even a fledgling armorer wouldn't know the difference of how to check for live rounds versus dummy rounds. Also, maybe they were plinking on the set earlier that day. They left some rounds in the gun. They set the gun down because the guns weren't supervised. They picked the gun up. Nobody bothered to check it. That's just more plausible.
Yeah.
But this theory, this second gunman on the grassy knoll theory just, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense.
It almost sounds, Steve, like whatever happened in the box of dummy rounds, even somehow if a live round did get in there, which it sounds like is what happened, someone should have checked it, shaken it, done something before that weapon was actually given to Alec Baldwin to fire.
That's right. The person who used the Sharpie who wrote dummy on that box, it's not the Sharpie's pen or the person who wrote it. It's the person who picks up those rounds. Their responsibility to check what they are before they put them in a gun and hand it to somebody.
Yeah, this has pretty much gotten us to this point here, Steve, but based on what you know and actually...
Neo plus fulvestrant is for HR-positive, HER2-negative metastatic.
With the only vitamin C that lasts 20
matter to them whether it passes or fails in terms of keeping their seats. And what they see is a window that's going to close on them probably next year with the congressional elections. So they want to get a big, ambitious agenda through now.
Now, this story about paying illegal immigrants separated from their families, $450,000, whatever the number is, the DOJ working on that, has really gained and not helped Democrats in their pitch going forward. Take a listen to the payment blunder back and forth over the last day.
There were reports that were surfacing that your administration is planning to pay illegal immigrants who are separated from their families at the border up to $450,000 each, possibly $1 million per family. Do you think that that might incentivize more people to come over illegally?
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah, but it's not true.
So this is a garbage report?
Yeah.
Okay. So
$450,000 per person. Is that what you're saying? That's not going to happen.
This is something that the Department of Justice is going to handle. That's how we got here, is because of the last administration. This is what we're trying to deal with here in this administration.
So the White House today tried to say, Mara, that the president is fine making these payments. The DOJ is going to make that assessment, but he was just specifically saying it's garbage to say $450,000. Right. Now the ACLU puts out this statement last night and says President Biden may not have been fully briefed about the actions of his very own Justice Department as it carefully deliberated and considered the crimes committed against thousands of families separated from their children as an intentional government policy. But if he follows through on what he said, the president is abandoning a core campaign promise to do justice for thousands of separated families. Here's the issue with this. The ACLU feels bold enough to put out a statement in kind of opposition to the president of the Democratic Party. And that sends its own signal out there.
Well, the ACLU is representing these families in court. The $450,000 that were talked about was a potential settlement to settle a court case. This is not administration policy that says we're going to give money.
But you heard the president. He sounded dismissive of the whole story. He called it garbage.
Yes, but if a judge rules in favor of the ACLU and says the United States has to pay these families something, the United States can appeal it. But this is not administration policy.
Right, but it was, Ben, a cleanup on aisle 4 today.
Yes, there's no doubt, but the president said $450,000, no, I'm not for that. He might be forced to pay something less, but that's up to a judge.
Ben?
Stuff, and honestly, we don't even know, Michael. We pulled those videos. We don't know those particular voters' preference or party because they didn't actually share it in that particular video, and that's cool too. As for the politics, which I want to get you on as we do late night steal, boy, some of the reactions seemed pretty overheated. Take a look.
What we have got tonight is the anatomy, really, of a Democratic meltdown, a complete and total meltdown.
Is an absolute rejection of what's been going on in the last year in Washington, D.C.
I think that the Democrats are coming across in ways that we don't recognize.
I got to believe that they're having a stroke right now.
Michael, you're a veteran. Is it possible to listen to voters, to learn and pivot without having this proverbial pundit stroke?
People need to chill a little, Pill. I mean, it's just, I don't like, you know, it's like, it's not the end of the world. It was an election. There are good lessons to learn for Democrats. There are important lessons to learn for Republicans. The parties are going to do what the parties are going to do. The citizens played their role. We saw, you know, increased turnout. And now everyone's sitting back and doing the, you know, the late night, Monday morning, under the carpet, you know, around the corner quarterbacking. We don't know. We are a year away from next year. What happened, and I know this firsthand, winning in 2009, getting Bob McDonnell and Chris Christie across the finish line was not the, you know, the beginning of what happened in 2010. There was a lot more work that had to go into that. In fact, I got in trouble, imagine that, for going out publicly when I was asked, well, Republicans are going to take the House in November, and this was in like February or March. I was like, no, I don't know. I don't even have all the candidates who are going to be running in primaries yet. How do I know what House races we're going to win? So you just don't know. You got to still do the work in politics. You just do. And it's just like those first two clips.
It is a non-steroidal anti-
Protect your home and all the dreams.
First.
Honey.
Since we actually invested in our country and
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and you know your way around it, and you're fun and sober, which we like, a little bit of both. You agreed to do this. I hope you'll come back and do it again because we can make it a thing at the end of the hour. Early late night, baby.
You got it, my friend, Little Ben.
Michael Steele, an original, and we will be right back.
Myself physically every single
and further eroded the 50-year-old electrical cable.
It's perfect, right? It's perfect.
Running back Michael Carter to rush for under 49.5 yards in this matchup.
That's 1-800-721-8406 now.
Makes the bottle spread.
Washington, at least for the moment.
Hey, Joe!
On a recent sunny morning along the waterfront in Washington, protesters in boats showed up at Senator Joe Manchin's houseboat, the Almost Heaven. They baited him to come out, and when he did, they gave him an earful.
We love West Virginia and we believe in our state. We need you to stand with us.
The protesters were upset that Manchin, possibly the most conservative Democrat in the Senate, was holding up passage of President Biden's domestic agenda package. Senator Manchin came to the deck, engaged the protesters for several minutes, even gave out his office number and his scheduler's name, and invited them to Capitol Hill.
Tom, come up to the office. You come up to the office, you're more than welcome.
Observers say that's Joe Manchin in a nutshell, fiercely independent, often stubborn, but in the end, likable.
There's no president going to tell me how to vote.
What no one doubts at the moment is the enormous leverage the 6'3", 74-year-old descendant of Italian and Czechoslovak immigrants currently wields in the nation's capital.
Manchin is certainly powerful. He's arguably one of the most powerful people in D.C. right now.
That's because Manchin and fellow Democrat Kyrsten Sinema are the lone Democratic holdouts to passing Biden's bill. Manchin is pushing back against the overall spending number, wants to pare down the Medicare expansion and paid family leave portions of the bill, and is against some of the clean energy provisions that might harm the coal industry in his home state of West Virginia.
Well, I'm reaching out to everybody I can on both sides of the aisle, talking to them. They know exactly where I stand. The problem is we're divided.
How much of a pain in the neck has Manchin been to Biden and the progressives in this process?
There have been sources in the White House and other Democratic sources that are very frustrated by how long the process is taking.
Joe Manchin was born in a small coal mining town in West Virginia to a politically active family that owned carpet and furniture stores. He went to West Virginia University on a football scholarship, later ran a coal brokerage firm, served as West Virginia's governor for about 5 years, then ran successful Senate campaigns based on his message that a Democrat can connect with hardline red state voters.
And I'll take dead aim at the cap and trade bill.
But even as a conservative Democrat, how has Manchin managed to win in a state where Donald Trump destroyed his Democratic opponents in the last 2 presidential elections?
He's a very approachable guy, and West Virginia is a small state, and it depends heavily on retail politics, and he handles that role well.
Now, how will Manchin get through this maelstrom politically? Analysts say he should weather any possible primary challenge when he's up for re-election in 2024, but it might be a bit tough for him to win in the general election. Wolf, will be interesting in 3 years.
We'll see what happens. Brian Todd, thank you very, very much. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, for CNN special coverage of former Secretary of State Colin Powell's funeral at the National Cathedral here in Washington. I'll be reporting from the National Cathedral. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. Aaron Burnett out front starts right now.
Tonight, the Biden administration sweeping new vaccine mandate deadline for 84 million Americans. Workers at private companies with 100 or more employees now required to get fully vaccinated by January 4th or face weekly testing. The backlash, GOP-led states mounting legal challenges. Could they block it? Just in, reports of a shooting at a resort popular with American tourists. What we're learning. Also tonight, the election fallout, growing pressure on Democrats to pass President Biden's spending plans after disappointing losses. Could there finally be a vote this week? Controversy in the trial of 3 white Georgia men charged with killing Ahmaud Arbery, a black man. The jury nearly all white. The judge saying it appears to be intentional discrimination. Why he won't intervene. The season's first cold snap, 28 million under freeze alerts from Texas to New Jersey. Our journey across America to Nashville, the mission to feed hungry families. Our visit to a grocery store created by country music legend Brad Paisley and wife Kimberly Williams Paisley, where the food is free. And inside the mother church of country music, my own chance to play on stage with superstar Michael Ray.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
across America. Reporting tonight from Nashville.
Good evening from one of the most legendary stages in all of music, the Ryman Auditorium here in Nashville. Nashville is stop number 4 in our week-long journey across America. We're going to dive into the rich history of this place and have much more from Nashville shortly. But our top story is one that will soon impact 2/3 of the American workforce. New federal regulations putting the onus on all but the smallest employers to see that their workers are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or that they are tested weekly. Companies now given 2 months to comply or face heavy fines. The regulations a follow-on to an executive order issued by President Biden in September. The White House tonight vowing to do everything it can to maximize compliance with the mandate. Gabe Gutierrez has details.
After months of vocal opposition, yet remarkable compliance, the new COVID vaccine mandate covers a staggering 84 million people, 2/3 of the U.S. workforce. It requires companies with 100 or more employees to ensure they're either fully vaccinated against COVID by January 4th or tested weekly. The order does not require employers to pay for the tests, though union agreements might require some employers to foot the bill.
The idea behind this is not to spend hours and hours and a lot of public money in court. The intent behind this is to get the health and safety of workers in the workplace, put that front and center.
U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh says the rule will be administered by OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Fines could reach nearly $14,000 per violation.
How exactly do you plan to enforce this?
Yeah, OSHA's done this work for over 50 years, and employers know the way that to work with OSHA on this thing.
Starting December 5th, covered employers will also be required to give workers paid time off to get vaccinated, as well as sick leave to recover from side effects. Today, during a Senate hearing, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and Dr. Anthony Fauci defended the Biden administration's COVID response.
We know that mandates work. If you look at, for example, the percentage of people in United Airlines or in the Houston Medical Association or in other organizations that have mandated, it works 99+%.
But mandates remain a flashpoint across the country. From Los Angeles today,
no one should lose their job over a vaccine mandate.
To Lynchburg, Virginia this week, where dozens of workers walked off the job.
We would like to have the company actually sit down and talk and come to the table with clear, open, and honest communication.
Tonight, some states are planning to sue the Biden administration over this latest mandate, after already doing so over a previous requirement for federal contractors. In Houston, Brian Felco is the CEO of a supply chain logistics company who's concerned about employees leaving in a tight labor market.
I have real mixed emotions because on the one hand, I know that the vaccine is our one-way ticket out of the pandemic. And on the other, there's a certain reality of managing our employee bases and running our companies. And those two may be on a bit of a collision course. We're going to find out.
And Gabe, what about states like Tennessee, where I am, that have laws or executive orders banning vaccine mandates?
Yes, Lester, the Biden administration says that because this new rule is under OSHA, it supersedes any local restrictions. Of course, opponents will no doubt take this to court. Lester?
Gabe Gutierrez in New York tonight. Thank you. We'll turn to the breaking news now out of Cancun, Mexico. Reports of an active shooter at a beach resort popular with American tourists. Let's get right to Miguel Almaguer. Miguel, what do we know?
Well, Lester, good evening. We're getting new details about this developing situation. Here's what we know right now. The Attorney General in Mexico says there was an altercation between several drug dealers on a beach when shots were fired near the Hyatt Ziva Riviera Cancun resort. A local news outlet reports at least 8 armed gunmen then entered the hotel carrying long guns. The commotion sent tourists scrambling. Images coming into NBC News show some taking cover in the resort's corridor and then later guests gathering in the hotel lobby. Mexico's Secretary of Public Security says 2 people died, both believed to be drug dealers. At this hour, it appears no tourists were injured, and the gunfire, thankfully, Lester, seems to be over. Lester?
Frightening, though. All right, Miguel, thank you. Now to Washington and the growing drama among Democrats after those major election victories for Republicans. Tonight, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi pushing to pass the president's massive spending plans, suggesting Democrats' failure to act led to those big losses. Kristen Welker now with the latest.
After the dismal results for Democrats on Election Day, new urgency tonight on Capitol Hill. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying she wants a vote on President Biden's $2 multi-trillion-dollar spending plans by the end of this week.
We're going to pass both bills, but in order to do so, we have to have votes for both bills, and that's where we are.
Pelosi pressed by NBC's Garrett Hake on whether Democratic inaction was to blame for the Election Day debacle.
Do you think Democrats were penalized for having not gotten these things done?
There's no question. If we, the more results we can produce in a way that is people understand in their lives, the better it is.
It comes after Republicans won stunning victories in Virginia, including for governor and lieutenant governor. And in deep blue New Jersey, the AP now projecting another surprising upset. The powerful Democratic state Senate president.
Hello, my name is Edward Durr. I'm running for New Jersey State Senate.
Ousted by a little-known Republican truck driver for a furniture store who shot his campaign videos on his phone. Moderate Democratic Senator Joe Manchin arguing the Republican victories are a sign voters don't want to rush into more massive spending.
People are concerned. They're concerned about inflation. They're concerned about the debt. No, we don't talk about it, but they are concerned.
But progressives say the takeaway is just the opposite, that voters want them to go big. And now they're backing Pelosi's last-minute decision to put 4 weeks of paid family leave back into the president's social spending plan, despite the fact that Manchin has signaled opposition.
Millions of women across the country are outraged that one man would say we're not going to do paid leave.
But tonight, top Republicans argue the election was a rebuke of those Democratic proposals.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. These people are governing like they have a mandate to radically remake the country. It's build back socialism.
Tonight, top House Democrats are scrambling to secure the votes to pass both bills, but some House moderates remain hesitant. And now we've learned President Biden is making phone calls to try to win over those Democrats. Lester.
Kristen Welker at the White House, thanks. There is breaking news from the Justice Department filing a lawsuit against Texas over its new voting law. The law, signed by Republican Governor Greg Abbott in September, limits drop boxes and requires voter ID for absentee ballots, among other provisions. The suit alleges the law violates protections for civil rights and voting access. Texas has yet to respond. In Georgia, controversy on the eve of testimony in the murder trial of 3 men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery, the young black man who prosecutors say was jogging when he was shot and killed by the men. Just one of the jurors who will decide the case is black. Ron Allen is there.
Tonight, passion running high in the community where Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed almost 2 years ago. Anger, only one black juror was selected to decide a case that Arbery's family supporters have called a modern-day lynching.
It was very disturbing to find out that we had 1 African-American versus 11 whites.
Do you still think you'll get justice?
I do think with the evidence that the state has that we will get justice for Ahmaud.
Gregory McMichael, his son Travis, and a neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, faced 9 counts each, including murder, aggravated assault, and attempted kidnapping. Accused of chasing, shooting, and killing Arbery. They've all pleaded not guilty. Now, after questioning hundreds of potential jurors in a county that's about 26% black, 11 white and 1 black juror selected. The defense using its legal challenges to eliminate 11 potential black jurors from the jury pool on the final day.
This court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination.
He added Georgia law prevents him from taking action because the attorneys gave reasons other than race for the dismissals, like insisting the prospective jurors could not be impartial.
That's really what the court has to decide. Are those race-neutral explanations that were offered, are they satisfactory? And in this case, the judge said that he did find them to be satisfactory.
Now, prosecutors expected to cite Arbery's race as a significant factor in his death. And the defendants expected to say they are attempting a citizen's arrest of a robbery suspect, acting in self-defense. The judge has told jurors the trial should last 2 to 3 weeks, with Arbery supporters and advocates who see this as a test for racial justice in America watching closely every day. Lester?
All right, Ron Allen, thank you. Millions of Americans are in for their first freeze of the season. 28 million under freeze alerts from Texas all the way up through New Jersey, including here in Nashville. Across the southeast and mid-Atlantic tomorrow, temperatures are expected to be 10 to 15 degrees below average. In just 60 seconds, we'll look at the impact of the pandemic on schools here in Nashville and the announcement by superstar Dwayne Johnson about guns on movie sets.
Welcome to the lifestyles of the smart and savvy. When it comes to...
We've had some... Nearly $81 billion. And on Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 33 points.
The aisles of Sunshine Foods in Brandon, most of the shelves remain pretty stocked.
Our warehouse that we get our groceries from, AWG out of Norfolk, they're actually doing a pretty good job keeping up with it.
But they're still experiencing the same problems as most grocery stores across the country.
We don't actually have a notice or they don't tell us what's not going to come in. We just kind of have to just order it and keep ordering it until it does come in.
And shortages on supply directly impacts the customer.
Everybody notices the price increases. It's kind of a roller coaster, especially with produce and meat department. 1 week you'll pay $9.99 for T-bone steaks, and next week it'll be $11.99.
Ernie Goss, a professor of economics at Creighton University, says the principal cause of the supply crisis is the labor shortage.
In other words, if you don't have the truckers out there, you can't get the supplies in or the outputs out.
He believes the price increases won't go away anytime soon.
We're seeing prices for food items growing by as much as 5 to 6% from last year. Those are going to increase in the weeks and months ahead as we come up to the holiday, Christmas buying season.
And there's only so much that consumers can do to keep their grocery bills down.
Obviously, they're going to have to be judicious in what they're buying and shop for those bargains. But there are going to be fewer and fewer bargains out there. Be prepared for those items that you've enjoyed in the past that may not be on the shelves.
Goss also says that while South Dakota actually has one of the most vibrant economies in the U.S. and is even back to pre-pandemic levels, the labor shortage will continue to drive the supply crisis. Andrea?
All right, Cordell, thank you. Quite a bit of fog out there for some of us in Sioux Falls. What can we expect as we...
She means the Build Back Better Act, the sweeping legislation that would expand child care funding and would launch universal free pre-K. It also would invest billions in climate change initiatives and expand healthcare access, including by lowering some drug prices. But the bill again hit speed bumps with questions around its cost. Some answers and pages of hard numbers came today from the nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation, which estimated that the bill raises at least $1.5 trillion over the next decade. Democrats said hundreds of billions more are in sections the committee did not score, meaning it would cover the bill's costs. Pelosi highlighted the finding within minutes.
That's not Democratic, it's not Republican, it's objective view that it is solidly paid for.
All this as House Democrats work overtime.
We're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar bill with over 2,000 pages.
Holding an 8-hour Rules Committee meeting last night to move the current version to the House floor, even as Republicans express opposition.
It is frustrating to be dealing with something that is so large, the biggest bill has ever passed. Really, do we understand exactly how this is all going to work? Because the language is a little confusing, and there's a lot of it, and it's detailed.
House Democrats have also made key revisions in their bill, adding work permits and a legal status for many undocumented immigrants, as well as a paid leave compromise to give 4 weeks of time to care for family. Still unclear is whether a key moderate, Democrat Joe Manchin, will accept the changes when the bill reaches the 50-50 Senate.
And for more on the state of play on Capitol Hill, Lisa joins me now. So Lisa, our viewers may feel they've seen this movie before. Neither bill so far having a vote on the floor. Where do we stand?
As of this hour, we do not know what the rest of tonight will look like. It is possible that the House could still vote on the Build Back Better bill tonight. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is trying to pressure those moderates who are now the ones holding out to get them on board, but as of this moment, they don't have the votes tonight. They may have to wait until tomorrow. Those moderates are saying they want to see the full bill. They're skeptical about some items. There are still some items being negotiated. I can run through them. That's state and local tax provision, immigration, prescription drugs, methane. All of those have small snags. We can get into that, but Judy, what's really going on here is a problem of trust. And think of it sort of like a wedding, two people getting married. One of them has cold feet when the other is ready. That was progressives. Then progressives said, okay, we're ready to get on board. Now the moderates have cold feet. Literally at this moment, we are waiting to see if both sides in the House Democratic Caucus will say I do to what is a massive and the most important vote potentially of many of these Democrats' career.
No question. So Lisa, when you mention still concerns over the cost, what specifically are they?
.com and take control of your site.
I'm going to by Sanford Health Plan. For a free guide, visit
South wind in Sioux Falls 15 to 30 miles an hour. We'll have a northwest breeze in the case of Rapid City, but it's still going to be warm. On Saturday, partly cloudy, low to mid-60s with a gentle southwest breeze. Really nice day. Really nice day on Sunday as well. Partly cloudy, 65, even though daylight saving time ends. Next week, 50s. Some showers possible Tuesday. Better chance of rain Wednesday into Thursday, which is Veterans Day. For the Aberdeen area, the weekend, 60 on Sunday, 50s next week. Chances for rain, especially by the middle part next week, even into Thursday, Veterans Day. For the Pierre area, 66 Sunday, 50s next week. Some lighter showers possible early in the week. Best chance of rain will be in the middle part next week. And in Rapid City, 70 Saturday, 60 Sunday, 50s next week. Chances of rain by the middle part of next week, followed by that cold air that's going to hang around for quite a while.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Lifeline is planning to host a big youth event at the Sioux Falls Arena next year. The event will feature community service, worship, hip-hop artists, and speakers. Lifeline says that the Z8 initiative is about reaching out and supporting younger generations.
And so this is a bridge where we're going to join them together and we're going to worship together and serve our town together, and we are so excited about that.
Lifeline is planning for thousands of teens to take part in this unique event.
USC football is coming off its bye and looking to inch closer to securing a playoff spot. We'll have the story up next in sports.
What they've requested.
Well, maybe she'll trim a few, like April 2021, April 2020. She said maybe some of the political polls that were involved then, maybe they don't have to be produced. But even though she could trim around the edges, Congress is going to be told that it is entitled to everything it wants. And she's not going to stay her judgment either, because Mr. Clark can't even assert harm to his client. It's all government documents. It's not his private papers.
So Gloria, we know some of the people around Trump, what they were saying in the run-up to the insurrection, right? We also know, by the way, that everything awful that we found out has often come from contemporaneous notes, okay? In this case, that's what they want. They don't have those yet. But we do have some public statements from some of the individuals around Trump on that day and the days prior to the insurrection. Here's pro-Trump lawyer John Eastman right before the riot when he said Mike Pence could go ahead and refuse to even seat the electors from states that Biden won until, he replaced them with Trump guys. Take a listen.
Those slates of electors are invalid. And I think if the vice president, as presiding over the joint session, would at least agree that because those ongoing contests have not been resolved, we can't count those electors.
So if that's what they were saying publicly, Gloria, well, if that's what you said publicly, there's nothing private to hide. Right. The other view, of course, would be that in private, there's actually a whole lot more that's incredibly alarming about the logic and the coordination.
Well, I think what you'll learn, and I think if the committee gets these documents, it's usually significant, because what you learn is what Trump was saying to these people. You will see drafts of things that maybe never went out, that Trump said, do this, do that, and maybe some people took some notes and said the president wants this, the president wants that, and maybe that never happened. We know that, according to the archivist, it's notes of the White House chief of staff, of the press secretary, of a White House lawyer. And I'm reminded of the Mueller investigation, because during that time, according to Mueller, the president said to Don McGahn, why are you taking notes? I hate lawyers who take notes. Lawyers don't take notes. My lawyers never took notes. Well, in fact, his lawyers did take notes. And those are the things that are going to be really revealing about the president's state of mind, what he was directing people to do at the time.
Well, it's amazing. Someone like Michael Cohen would probably say, all right, maybe I didn't take notes, but I recorded it. Professor, Professor
And Kim took them to volunteer at Unity Shop, a free supermarket in California that sparked an idea.
Did you understand how prevalent hunger and food insecurity was in your own community?
I knew there was definitely need, but it's not until you open something like this that you really see it.
The store is different from a food pantry. Customers who can prove need are able to shop for the foods they choose from a variety of fresh, healthy choices.
Let's get a few cases of it.
Courtney Vrablick, the store's executive director, knows what it's like to need help and the emotions that come with it.
What we want families to know is that they're safe here, they're valued here, that no one is going to question their food choices.
The store opened in March 2020. 4 days later, the pandemic forced them to shut the door.
It's delivery day at the store, and we're about to deliver.
So Brad and Kim joined with volunteers to pick, pack, and deliver groceries, providing meals to nearly 800 households weekly, more than 1.5 million meals in 18 months.
You know, people were in tears. It was really a rewarding thing in the middle of one of the most challenging times we've ever seen.
The store reopened to customers in July.
So our idea is to get people back on their feet on the road to self-sufficiency so they won't need us beyond a year.
The couple hoping to see ideas like this take off in other cities in the country. Up next, I get to take the stage where some of the biggest stars have performed here in Nashville.
People everywhere living.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Returning to the work it should be doing, and it should be doing it on behalf of American citizens who are facing unjust restrictions imposed upon them by the arbitrary, capricious decision of state governments that seek to prevent the flourishing of American democracy. So, dadgum, thank you very much for showing up, and may this be a token of what is to come.
Yeah, indeed. And let me move on now to this gambit, because what Republicans are now doing is they basically demand credit anytime any of them ever voted for anybody black, or if there's a black guy in the Supreme Court that's conservative. Any black conservative is supposedly, or the black president having ever been elected, right? The fact that he was elected, period, means there's no racism. And even if they're literally trying to ban books about black people and saying you cannot talk about the black experience, we're going to cut that out of schools because white people don't like it, they still want credit. They still want to be able to say it's not racist. And in this case, I just want to get your comment on this, because the two choices that voters had in Virginia were a black woman who shares my daughter's name and Jamaican heritage, and and an Afro-Latina who's part Lebanese. So you had the choice of two brown/black people, and you picked one of them. Do you get credit? Do you get special credit? It's like I had ice cream or cake as two options, but I want credit for lowering my calorie count because I picked ice cream. You had two choices, and they were both black. Your thoughts?
I've eaten the cake and the ice cream, clearly. But what's interesting is that you're absolutely right. They want credit for breathing. They want credit for having lunch. They want credit for having hair in the morning or getting up and brushing their teeth. Look, I've made an achievement that should be noteworthy. No, you are doing what all political figures must do, make choices. The problem is here, they want white supremacy by ventriloquist effect. There is a black mouth moving, but a white idea through the running on the runway of the tongue of a figure who justifies and legitimates the white supremacist practices. We know that we can internalize in our own minds, in our own subconscious, in our own bodies, the very principles that are undoing us. So to have a black face speaking in behalf of a white supremacist legacy is nothing new. And it is to the chagrin of those of us who study race that the white folk on the other side and the right-wingers on the other side don't understand this is politics 101 and this is race, not even 101. What's beneath 101? It's the pre-K of race. You should understand the fact that if you tell black people, look, I support a Negro. Look, there is a person of color that I am in favor of, and that person person of color happens to undermine and undercut and subvert the very principles about which we are concerned, you do yourself no service by pointing to them as an example of your racial progressivism. So in that sense, they need to have a lesson in critical race theory so that they can understand what critical race theory is. And Joy, we know this. First of all, they ain't critical. They ain't run a race in a long time that's meaningful in terms of our people, and they ain't got no theory. Critical race theory, we know, comes from critical theory. The word critical in theory means let's be on the side of those who need to be emancipated for things that are imposed upon them that enslave them. That's all it means, and they've invented an entire a universe of meaning out of that one word.
So let's talk about the Democrats for a minute, because here's the thing. As I said the other day, that I think the challenge for Democrats is that they also lack the vocabulary to aggressively defend Black people, even though Black Americans give 90% and Black women give 95, 96% of their votes to Democrats. And yet when it comes time to defend Black folks, this guy who came up, who's one of the people who came up with this strategy, said that the goal of pretending that critical race theory is this boogeyman is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper that makes them uncomfortable and immediately think critical race theory. And that is what they've implemented. He said, we've decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with, he just said Americans, but he really means with white Americans. Democrats don't seem to know what to do about this. Can you give, I mean, and I don't care about this, by the way, as a Democrat. I'm just going to be real right now, because the Democrats can be really irritating. I care about it because they're the only party left that cares about democracy, and since they're the democracy party, that's why I'm saying this, not as a Democrat. But go on. How could they answer this?
Well, absolutely. They got to answer. First of all, Christopher Rufo is doing a kind of rhetorical sleight of hand and blackface. He's taking a black term or a term generated out of African-American and progressive legal theory and using it as the bête noire, the whipping boy and whipping girl of the right wing against the progressives. And they don't even realize that it is a black eye literally and a black eye metaphorically. All of it, which is to say this. The Democrats got to understand, as they say in Tennessee, dance with the one that brung you. Dance with the one that brung you. And if Black people have been loyal to no end, if Black people have been supportive of this party, the Democrats have got to find a spine, have got to find a spirit, and have got to find the space to articulate some valuable lessons here. And here's the one thing we should learn from the right wing. Have game. Have manipulation, this is the game we're in. And if this is the game we're in, learn to describe what you're about. Learn to describe what you're meaning. Learn to describe what your goals are in ways that don't immediately alienate the people that you're trying to support, number one. And number two, that don't play easily into the game of the right wing. Should we have to do that? No. But do we have to? Absolutely right. Do you want the commercial or do you want the product? If we want the product, let's be concerned then about how to describe it, package it in a way that will be appealing to the broadest audience possible.
And maybe pass the bills that will help your voting base and voting rights. Just saying. Michael Eric Dyson, it's just advice and you don't have to take it. Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate you, my friend. Coming up next on The ReidOut, juries have been seated in the murder trials of Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin and the 3 men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And in a surprise to exactly no one, both juries are almost entirely white. Critical race theory would be helpful to describe this. More after this.
Number and birthday, Dave Montier. This is something they've been doing in Minnesota for over 10 years now, and Texas has copied us and going to do the same thing. It's really a nonpartisan, bipartisan, it's an objective measure, and I think objective measures make a lot more sense and really help restore voter confidence, and there'll be less squabbling afterwards when it's done by objective measures.
And what about...
But then I stopped to think of you.
And this is Code 24, General. Code 24.
All right. I'll have all forces in action immediately. This is General Bauer speaking. Get me Sink Land Fleet.
Alert all forces. Area San Juan, Puerto Rico. Code emergency. Code emergency.
We just can't wait for Karen.